Hi, folks. Welcome to this week's Check-in with the Doctor. This week I interviewed Tom Edwards. He's a risk advisor with Deloitte Consulting and founder of the Modern SC. As I frequently do, near the end of our conversation, I asked him if he had ever delivered a demonstration that went particularly poorly, and he shared a story of a demo that was at the end of a very long sales engagement, and they forgot to do one important thing, and as a result, the demo became a bit of a car crash. Take a listen.
That's a very good question. Are we talking sort of any point in my career?
Yeah.
Anytime?
Yeah.
There was one time, and this was a couple of years ago, but it will always stick with me. And that was that we'd been through a very long sales cycle with a prospect. It was a really big, important deal. And all of the small demos and the little discovery calls, we'd used our in-house video conferencing tool, and that had all worked well, all fine. We went through this RFP process, and then the final stage was to do a real in-depth demonstration based on the requirements of the RFP. And in our market, that's something that we see quite a lot. But suddenly we changed something. They said, can you use our internal web conferencing facility? And the big mistake we made was saying, yeah, sure.
I can't imagine. I got to hear the punchline. What happened?
It was a bit of a disaster, and it's something that, again, this goes back to the beginning of this conversation. We're talking about reflective learning. This is something that I absolutely had to reflect on and really learn from it, because we used this new technology and the webcams wouldn't work, and then it crashed. And throughout this, it should have been a 3-hour presentation. It must have crashed 4 or 5 times, and we had to redial in. It was a car crash. And this was all because we didn't have just an initial call using their system, because all the previous calls in this entire sales cycle, which was probably 9 or 10 months, we used our in-house tool. And since then, that has been a huge learning experience for me. And that is test all the systems with the prospect maybe the day before, so that you know everything is going to work. Because no matter how prepared you are in terms of the content you're delivering, if the technology fails you, what's the point?
What a great story. I'm always so flattered that people like Tom are willing to be vulnerable enough to open up and share stories of failure. And there's so many small lessons to learn here. I actually wrote down what he said there at the end, because I think it's worth repeating. He said, no matter how prepared you are in terms of the content you're delivering, if the technology fails, what's the point? And that's so true. In the 6 habits I wrote about, I talk about habit number 4, which is to practice. And again, it's one of the things that is the first to fall off sort of the plan, right? It's so easy to overlook just running a simple test and running a simple practice run through, particularly on the technology that we're using. If you're using a different, in this case, a video conferencing bridge or a web presentation conferencing platform, and it's an important demonstration or important meeting, it's just so important to do that final extra test. And as he said, I mean, we spend, in his case, he spent 10 months or more managing this relationship, building this relationship, managing this engagement, all to have it come down to one key important demonstration. And then the smallest little thing turned it into a disaster. So such a good reminder to just, particularly if it's a big important meeting or demo, just make sure that you don't overlook the small things, the simple things that are so easy to take for granted. And then the other thought that I had in listening to this is the fact he used the term reflective learning. And again, habit number 6 is to perfect our craft. And the reality is even though we have demos like Tom talked about that don't go particularly well, we can always learn something. And as he said, I'll never make that mistake again. And hopefully those of you listening to this can learn from his mistake and can learn from some of the mistakes that I've made, and remember that whenever you're going into a demonstration like that, just be sure to practice and develop the habit of reflective learning yourselves. So thanks for tuning in, folks. If you like this, give it a thumbs up. If you know somebody else who might be interested, I encourage you to share it. And otherwise, remember, people buy from people. Take care.